Hello dear community and welcome to our current video talk from the current edition of Health Hub Vienna, and we'll talk about a white paper which you actually also published and which is called Covid-19, an opportunity for healthcare in Austria, and that's actually our topic. And we have, well, the authors of the white paper here, which is Sabrina Lagoon of Health Hub Vienna and Jelvila Bodomo, also from Health Hub Vienna, and from the startup scene we have Harald Schnieder from Scarlet Red, who will give us the startup perspective on it. So perhaps first from the authors of the white paper, which opportunities do arise?
I think one of the main things we see is that there's been quite a mindset shift, both from healthcare providers and also patients during this time, and really a high acceptance of technology and digital health solutions. So this is really going to help us as we move forward. Also, another thing is that during this period, a lot of emergency regulations allowed for things to be put in action, and we saw that a lot worked. For example, a lot of startup solutions were really a mainstay in this period of time. So I think these are two of the big takeaways from the paper as well.
Yeah, so the paper was also revealing some of the gaps in the system. Of course, the treatment of COVID patients was put as a priority in order to avoid the spread of the pandemic and allow the best survival rates. But it actually showed that a lot of the other patients, for example, the chronic patients, were left on the side. We have seen that the number of at-home resuscitations, so restarting the heart and after a heart attack, for example, doubled during the pandemic because, and this is a clear correlation, the number of hospital visits was dropped by half or by 40%.
Because people were just afraid.
People didn't go to the hospital because of the risk, and this is something where, monitoring cardiac metrics is something that is pretty much easily doable from a technical perspective in terms of startups. Yeah. So we've had actually the Patientenanwalt, the patient advocate rights from Niederösterreich, tell us actually there is no way around. There's no way to support and properly take care of chronic patients in this kind of situations without digital health. Yeah.
Harald, perhaps a short pitch. What does Scarlet Red actually do? And how did you actually, as a startup, then experience the crisis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in general, I would say what we did before COVID-19 was something different than what we do today. And this, I think, is true for all of us. Before, we worked with pharma companies, B2B only, meaning we provided our solution for pharmaceutical companies for remote safety and efficacy assessment in clinical trials. Of course, we built up a lot of telemedicine know-how over the last years, but there was not the momentum that we decided on to push actively into this field. With COVID-19, it dramatically changed from one day to the other. So what we did, we immediately reconstructed part of our platform, introduced new televideo streaming services. We provided the service to physicians, nurses, elderly care, and there was a very high adoption rate. So it didn't take us long to explain the value of the technology. So this was a dramatic shift.
Jelvila, when you presented the white paper on stage, you also mentioned the example of MySugar and that some solutions actually aren't used as much as they could be used.
Yes,
could you elaborate
exactly.
that?
So I think this is one thing that a lot of the interview partners really pointed out, is that these solutions do exist and that they are here, but what is really lacking is really the frameworks, and this is due to kind of a lack of consensus from the different stakeholders. In terms of what Anton Kittelberger talked about was the reimbursement. This is huge, because if they're not able to implement that into the solutions, then all the services are not going to be available in the country. This is why with MySugar, even though it's such a successful Austrian startup, its services are only minimally available here, and they're very successful instead in other countries. So it was really interesting to show this example as well. Yeah.
So is this thing of not being a profit in your own country? Do you experience that as well?
Well, when I just think back, we went with a product on the market 2015. we provide it for free in Austria for a lot of companies, and no one wanted to have it. I mean, we went to USA, we went to Silicon Valley. I pitched a product there. 3 months later, we had a German client. One of the biggest one was Henkel, and they met us in Silicon Valley. They saw my pitch there, and they bought the product 1 month later. So that's how it worked. Now, of course, they know us here, but I think it's amplifier. Silicon Valley is still an amplifier of the message, and I think we have now also with the Health Hub Vienna and others, we have the right instruments to amplify the message, and I think we just need to invest a bit more time into these instruments, and then I think we can become something similar, not the same, but a European kind of Silicon Valley. I hope so.
And I think Austria has a lot of potential because people are very educated here. They're very technology affine. The COVID showed a huge acceptance rate. I think it showed that 97% of the population were agreeing to share their health data.
And I just want to add there also, we might assume that the older population might be more skeptical, but actually they were the group with the highest willingness to share their data in terms of COVID health data for COVID research at the medical university as well. So that was very interesting.
This is an interesting finding, so I can only support this. I went through to a lot of hospitals recently and to explaining our technology, and when elderly people were involved, they were so much excited about this. They immediately understood the value of the technology, and it was not the case that they could not use a tablet or an iPhone. So they were really techy. So I think there is a different understanding what we had before, what in general what was existent. Elderly people like it a lot. They go, they use Facebook. I mean, they are the major population now in Facebook.
Is for
exactly, old people now. Meanwhile, old people. So there was a completely shift, and so they know how to use such kind of technologies in general.
Yeah. So we were trying to look into, it seems, and we had this during the panel discussion today as well, right? It seems like everybody agrees that this is the way to go, that this is a great way to avoid simple patients being sitting in the same room, and that it is one of the main solutions in case another pandemic hits. So simply to help with the holes in terms of coverage for rural patients that are in the countryside, or for people who have busy schedules, or for people who don't have access to mental health. But we were quite surprised to see and ask. So now what do we do? What is the next step? And I think Elvira, you have gathered some suggestions or some action items from the interviewees, right?
Yeah. So there were a lot of differences in opinion from the different stakeholders because they were coming from different viewpoints. But I think some of the key points were, for example, a regulatory sandbox for healthcare would be a really great step forward.
Like for the fintechs.
Exactly. Yeah. So the one that just went into effect beginning of September. So if we had something like this in healthcare, then it means that our regulations could also meet the possibilities of the innovations and technologies that we have. Another thing was the technological infrastructure. So we also heard from the panelists, with Elga was there as well. And I think this is something to really look into because there needs to be a unified system at the end of the day, even though there are different suggestions. So that's one area,
Yeah, so I think like a really cool example that we have here in Vienna that I think everybody, even people who are not into digital health, organized data sets will understand is, if you use the Vinmobile app, you can say, I want to go there. And then the system will actually tell you, actually it's better if you take not an Uber, but if you take like a car sharing, or if you take the bike, you can go by metro, by tram, you can bike there, you can do really any sort of like services. And what you have to imagine is that this is only possible because there is a backbone to it, and really an IT backbone that offers the data that the startups can really plug into, kind of like plugins, and that actually gives a really seamless experience for the user who cannot even think about the number of modules that are behind, because the user is actually just seeing the end effect. And this would be a really amazing thing. Let's think about the example of Scarlet Red. If you could, if you would not have to have, let's say, a different app for every health domain, but if you could have like one unified, backbone where you could say, okay, here's my problem, and then, okay, I will maybe snap a picture of your skin and you will actually take over the service, right?
Of course, yeah. It is also something where we have a lot of requests recently. I mean, of course, we are the experts for taking standardized images and the interpretation of this data, but this alone is not enough, you know. You need a lot of other information what you want to put into this context. So we're collecting now meanwhile also questionnaires, subjective information. We collect other health information, for example, blood pressure, because all this data together is the value. So there's not one technology which can solve all the different questions.
Yeah, because a rash could be caused by
Lot
side
of
effect of a
reasons,
medication,
Exactly,
for example. Yeah.
Is it an allergic rash? So it's something different than if you have a rash because of a vaccine injection. So there's a lot of difference between. It may look similar, but the context decides on what it is. And still, it doesn't need to be a diagnostic application. It could be decision support. So this is also what we are focusing on. So of course, everyone asks us, is it a diagnostic tool? We have a lot of features which could be diagnostics already, but we don't want to replenish physicians. It's not our aim. We want to support them. That's why we're developing support decision tools. And this is in the context of other data highly relevant. So plug and play would be cool, yeah?
Another topic was really the mentioning of putting digital health as a national effort. And this is something, I don't know who will watch this video, but if there are more decision makers, thousands, if there are more decision makers, people who have the power to really engage the conversation, not only within their company, but on the scale of society, I really encourage you to start the conversation. And I think I don't want to do pure advertisement, but I think Health Hub is a really good platform for this, because we have pharmaceutical companies, we have private insurance company. Today we kickstarted a dialogue with the Dachverband der Sozialversicherung, who hosted us for this event, which I think is extremely meaningful because it means they're really ready to start the conversation. We had on the panel Elga, the ITSV, so I think people are super willing to really discuss, and it was really interesting to see during the panel discussion that everybody was agreeing, okay, let's do this.
It's finally
now
time.
What is the problem? And it seemed to be that it would be great to reach a consensus, and not only through words, but also through making it into a real priority. In terms of reimbursement, I guess, is a big topic.
Absolutely, it's a very big topic for us. Of course, I mean, since we changed now, transformed also in a B2B2C business model, of course, reimbursement with social insurance is important, because at the end, we all know that patients usually don't invest too much in their health. So if you let patients pay for services, then maybe it's not the best way to provide your technology. And my background is I'm biologics. So I studied biology. I'm a genetic engineer, so I very often compare what we're doing with building up an ecosystem. So the ecosystem is very diverse. For a diverse ecosystem, you need all the different partners. You need technology, you need insurances, you need pharma companies, cosmetic companies, whatsoever. You need the patients, you need physicians. So you need all these stakeholders together, and bringing them together is the key. And defining an aim. And if we have one aim together, then we have an application, and you can have a lot of different applications side by side. So it's really about building up ecosystem, e-health ecosystem, not just one solution.
That's actually what you're doing with Health of Vienna, right?
Yeah, and I think it was super interesting. I think Yevila could tell a bit more about this. Actually interviewing all the stakeholders who have different interests, which is completely understandable. For example, the Chamber of Doctors and the Chambers of Pharmacists, Apotheker, Kammer, too many languages. It's or the Social Security have very different. They have the same interest, which is the interest of the patient, but their daily practice and their daily subjective experience is not the same, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe you could tell a bit more about this, right?
Yeah, I think they're coming from a different point of view. So you saw a lot of the times from the doctors were also very focused on the tariff system or on reimbursement as well, just so that these solutions can be used and available as well. I also talked to, for example, a medical device regulator, and he was also very adamant about keeping these standards in place. we can't just say innovation without making sure that everything meets a standard, because it's still to do with healthcare and medical as well.
And it's a huge liability as well.
Yeah.
Like if you let a startup say, okay, let's say you have a cancer diagnostic startup and the startup tells you don't have cancer or something like that, or you have cancer and you enter into a chemotherapy course, there's a huge liability, and then who is liable in the end? Like the person who furnishes the data, the person who so there's a lot of concerns around like the highest standard.
And there's also maybe you experienced this as well. So in the beginning, when there was the pandemic's outbreak, so we had a lot of digital noise about a lot of different technologies, a lot of different solutions. Everyone wanted to be part of this journey. Basically, everyone wanted to contribute, but at the end, it pays out that only those who have the right quality, the certificates, ISO certificate, CE certification, FDA approval, whatsoever. So those products can really make it to the end users. Otherwise, it just stays technology. And this is also something where I'm happy now that meanwhile there's a step not back but forward, so that there is a momentum now, what we gained over the last month, because there was a bit more silence about this topic, that the regulations looked a bit more about, is it certified or not, can we use it, can it be placed on the market or not. So and this is something what I missed initially. There was a lot of noise, but now I think we have now the quality approach again, luckily.
We really look into this at Health Hub with startups. Some of them, such as Medicus, don't have the data in the cloud, but on the phones, on the user's phone. I think Symptoma doesn't save user, or let's say it has anonymous user data in their database. So I think this is definitely something in Austria specifically, where we are really closer to our privacy in terms of culturally as well.
Of course, sure.
It's actually a huge asset, because we also create products that fit this mindset.
I mean, for us, it was never a challenge, to be honest, data privacy topics. I was surprised that it was such a big topic in this field, because if you develop a e-health solution, of course, one of the primary topics is to assure data safety. This is part of the homework, what you need to do, and otherwise it's impossible, you basically to provide this product and even talk about it, so I was really surprised, to be honest.
So now, like, I mean, you have startups in your system, you have corporates, you have the Apotheker, you have the, like, who's still lacking? Like, who would you like have on board also in Health Hub Vienna, where it's like, okay, this would be cool to have them in, or we need them to actually create this backbone together where everybody can plug in and
exactly. So this year, especially during COVID, we realized that it's really amazing to have pilot projects, and I think you can attest from it with between startups and, for example, pharma industry. But we realize that it's super important, even more important, that the pilot project arrives to the end user, and this is only possible if the people who are responsible for implementing it are involved into the conversation. So we started recently getting a bit deeper into conversations with, of course, the public players, as you see where we are today, but also hospitals, tech companies, even people who are from the patient side. We really need every stakeholder to be involved. Why? Because this digital transformation will happen. And I think if we want everybody's voice to be heard and to avoid any type of biases towards one of the players regarding to the other, I think it's extremely important to really voice concerns as early as possible and be part of the transformation. You have the opportunity to be part of the transformation very early on. And I think the white paper was a great example of like trying to take the pulse of like what is everybody thinking right now. Now everybody has tried video talking with their doctor. So what was the outcome? And also, so we invite startups to join, and we absolutely invite every stakeholder of the health system. It doesn't have to be solely Austrian to be part of it. And of course, you can find all of our contact information on the website, and I'm super happy to schedule a call, discuss the topic anytime. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we will have some exciting times ahead still, and I think it's cool that you actually worked on this white paper and then actually also presented some possible solutions.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. So I hope some decision makers and politicians, whoever sees this,
That's the goal.
decides to make a Winmobil app on health or something for Austria tomorrow.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
It's urgent because the second wave is right now. So
That's very true.
yeah. So we need these solutions now. We need them
As soon as
yesterday.
possible.
And basically they are there. So there are they exist.
Yeah.
There are existing solutions. So they just need to be used.
So we need to put the puzzle pieces together, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's all in place.
That's why
I
we're here.
think.
So that's your job. And
Yeah.
okay, thanks a lot for this talk. I think it's been really and great inspiration, and I think we will see what comes out of this. And dear community, thank you for watching.